Hi. Well.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Meeting is officially starting. Charity, you there? Okay.
Yes, I am.
Okay. And today, so we have two guests today. We have Charity Roby on Zoom, and we have Christina Herman today. And this is Meg Larson. You know, everybody else, I think.
Julia Brennan. From the Gazette.
The Gazette. And Don D'Amato. You know Don. And you know me. Okay, so I have to confess, I have no idea where we are with the April minutes. Everybody read them?
So
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So
Let's,
a lot of
I
things
think
going
so.
on.
I think I read them promptly, but then
okay, I
not
know.
recently. So
It's-
should we,
We'll table that and then take
okay.
it up in July, and by then, I'm gonna take the minutes today, and then we'll look at them again.
Oh, you're taking minutes today?
Yeah, because we don't have a clerk yet, so I offered to do that to make today possible.
Okay. Christina's just tech support.
Yes.
I'm happy to go. I'm happy to see you again.
No, Christina, you can't take minutes.
I will anyway.
Okay.
But before we get into
Go
these
ahead.
items, would you just give us an update on the ETIP submission
I don't have anything. It was submitted
and accepted?
and accepted.
Okay.
There was a glitch. I guess I didn't explain this. Did I explain this to you?
I don't think so.
Okay, so I sent it in Friday. It was due, and then I didn't get anything back from them, an acknowledgement. And so Monday morning, first thing, I emailed them and said, could I please get an acknowledgement? And I heard back from a woman named Tessa Greco, who I think was accepting the stakeholder forms. And she said, in fact, she had not received it. But I had sent it to myself and to her on the town email. I did a test. When I sent it, I opened it up and it was fine. So I was puzzled, but she apologized, meaning I have a feeling there was a glitch on their side.
Oh.
So I resent it. I had the email saying that it had been sent at the correct time, Friday.
Yeah.
So she did not contest that. But I also sent it on my personal email, and I talked to her on the phone. So as far as I know, I never heard anything that it was not good. I mean, in fact, I still have her email acknowledging that it'd be fine. So
Great. So you do have an acknowledgement.
yes, I do.
Excellent.
Good.
Yeah, it's not exactly what I wanted. I wanted
Yeah.
a more official acknowledgement. So I think we just have to wait till, what I could do is check in with our contact at the Island Institute. Could do it today, in fact, and just see if there's any sort of idea of when we might hear.
It's been 3 weeks.
Yeah, the 19th of May,
So
so
3 weeks as of,
I think they said
or 4 weeks.
sometime in
No,
July,
it would have been 4
July or
weeks as of
August.
tomorrow.
I thought it was like June, July.
June, July,
Yeah.
they were gonna get back to
Well, but
the new
yeah,
cohort potentially.
they should have been distributed though to the evaluators.
Yes, yes. And by the way, I shared the application, since it's public, with Christina, because we had a discussion last weekend about various things. And Christina knows the work of NREL very well. So she thought it was a great idea.
Thank you for that update.
Okay. Green Expo, so I sent an email out to the committee heads on Monday, a little later than usual, but one of the issues was we're not quite sure where the expo or the craft fair is going to be this. Well, we do know, actually. We have a plan B. So the school will be digging up considerable amount of area around the school. So Janelyn Messer called me last week and said, we need to talk. She wants to move the craft fair in case the school isn't open again to the field behind the school, between the tennis courts and the school. There's like a ball field there. And Janelle and I met on Sunday and looked at it. Parking looks a little squishy.
Why not Fisk Field? Like I feel like Fisk
She looked at
Field-
Fisk Field, and she decided that it was going to be too hot. So she was concerned about that. If we think that, we can always look at it again.
Just because the construction at the school is going to be in the front yard, the back parking lot, and that side yard.
Yes,
So it's really, I mean, that's going to be a construction zone.
yes, she knows that. There'll be no parking in the parking lot. So we were looking at the area behind the tennis, the road behind the tennis court, but also the area to the side of the tennis court.
Yeah, I mean, I would talk to the school about where they're planning on staging the construction, because that back field is where I would stage construction, so it's off of School Street, and so it's off of the main road. I would have them coming in from the back and doing it that way, depending on, you know, some of the other things, but keeping it kind of off the main road. So just, I would coordinate that a little bit with whoever their contractor is, just kind of figure out what they're using as a staging area too, because
Okay,
I don't know, I feel like the school property itself may not be the best option this year.
okay. So you're thinking Fisk Field might be better.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's hot. It's gonna be hot no matter what. I mean, it always is.
It is.
Is there any way to get it out of the center altogether? Because all the construction, even around School Street and Fisk Field will be, I mean, what about the chicken barbecue venue over on,
You have to coordinate with
South
the fire
Cartwright.
department, because the fire department has permission to use that field.
but there's
So-
a parking field.
Yep.
I mean, they just, that's a natural for,
What do you-
I know it draws, you know, the people from off island away from their usual central location, but this is South Cartwright and Burns,
Oh, so you're talking where the,
or Cartwright and Burns. I don't know if it's
so you're
south or
talking at
north
St.
there.
Gabe's Field there?
Yeah.
It's the, you know, where the chicken barbecue
Yeah,
is.
St. Gabe's,
So
yeah.
they do,
Well, the town will talk to Janelyn and kind of come up with a solution, figure it out. We'll
Okay,
coordinate with everybody and see what we can do.
okay, so the town's gonna contact her, or should you?
Well, I mean, she still has to, you know, applications for outdoor assembly permits and all that. We've approved the one for the banners, I believe, but I don't know that the location's been nailed down. So
Okay,
we'll coordinate back. I'll start.
so I just put an application into the school for the field behind the school.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll talk to chief and all the people.
okay, and why don't I just contact her too, and
Yep.
have this discussion? I mean, my concern was the parking at the school. It's just, and you know, trying to squeeze a lot of people into that space next to the tennis field. My concern was that, I mean, she agreed, she understood that you'd have to have somebody there, a couple people there
Right.
directing people, but even then, it's,
I think that's gonna be a challenge, and I also don't want people walking through construction to get to it. You know what I mean? I don't
Right.
want, I mean, I'm sure it'll be fenced in, it'll be fenced off. but
right.
I just think it's kind of asking for trouble.
Well, even if you park at the Legion Hall, you're still gonna have to walk all the way down here. And
And then how are you can come in
Wrong
through the
direction.
side, or you're gonna come in through the,
Yeah.
you know. how-
exactly, you'd have people in the street walking the street to get there,
Right,
which is not ideal.
the library lawn isn't big enough for this.
not for the craft fair.
Craft fair is huge.
Yeah.
She's already got like 50 people signed up or something.
Yeah, I would try to get it out of the center if possible. That's my hunch.
Or, I mean, we'll figure it out, we'll brainstorm it, but
Okay. All right. And then I asked the committee chairs to come up with ideas. I would love more ideas, and also in this committee, anything new. One thing I'd like to do is thinking of the waste management plan statewide, but also on Shelter Island. I'd love to focus a little bit on composting. And there was somebody who gave a talk at the compost conference or webinar, or whatever you want to call it. The meeting that we had in January at the library, Anthony, I can't think of his last name.
From the Ecological Culture Initiative, and the
Is that
one in
what it is?
Hampton Bays, that
I
one.
think so.
Yeah.
2 guys.
They're
Yeah.
terrific.
They're terrific, and I'm going to see if they would come and just sort of set up a whole bunch of different, because they have different types of home composting, like DIY, versus the ones we tried to test with the highway department, which I found was not very successful for me, but other people have had success. Anyway, so that's one thing, but I also asked Jerry, and I CC'd you on that I would love to have a meeting with the committee heads.
Yes.
And
Yeah, we're gonna coordinate something with
So-
everybody.
because I feel like it's overdue and we need to catch up on what everybody's doing,
Yeah, I think so too.
share information. So that's that. And then if there are any other things that we should be doing.
Maybe I was gonna do this under other business, but, so there was a, like, over 8,000 square foot house built in 1990 that was torn down and went in a dumpster. Everything. Every last bit of it, appliances, everything was trashed. And we've talked about recycling, demolition material, and I wonder if we could be doing 2 things, which is looking at ways to incentivize, maybe through even fees at the building department, not doing that when a demo is permitted. And then, a community-based structure for circularity of those materials. Because obviously at this point, it's cheaper to do that than to do whatever there isn't an alternative on the island. We have talked about what an incredible resource that could be. So maybe there's some way we could elevate the profile of that at the expo. We could research if there are any other municipalities doing this. It's obviously not the same as the Repair Cafe, but it's the same philosophy. Finding a way to create an opportunity for that material to end up being reused. And I don't know if it's, punitive or onerous tipping fees beyond what it is now, or, the carrot and the stick. What are the options? And
Well, it may even just be enough where if we have something established where people will come in and take all the things that could be reused, then
before demo,
then you already have a significant decrease in your cost of demo.
Right.
Because it's all weighed and you pay by pound or ton or whatever it is. So, if you remove a lot of these things, then you don't have to pay to remove them. So there's definitely potential.
so that's more a communication or a network or a platform
Right.
that maybe the town could host somehow through the building department, getting notification when these things are about to happen. And then,
Then you need
it's like a flip a switch, really.
Right. You would need a group of people who would be willing to do that, to do the demo, to cart things away, but then you also need a storage place for it.
Right.
You need a method to then disperse it. So it would have to be a well thought out program for it to be effective.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are models. So I don't know if there's a national organization that supports that concept of circularity, but I'd be happy to do some, just searching, Googling, to see what's out there.
It is something that does come up in the New York State Waste Management Plan.
Oh, is that treatment or management that you meant on the item 3?
I did not mean treatment, waste treatment, it's management.
Management, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, that's a big component of that plan. One
Right.
question I had, about like the cafes, the appliance cafes, et cetera. Is there any liability Like if somebody,
Gets hurt while working on it.
well, there's not only that,
fixes a
but if
toaster.
somebody takes the toaster home and it sets their house on fire,
You know, I have.
Ask Kyle.
it's just something that occurred to me, like who,
I mean, I guess technically you could purchase a toaster at a store, take it home and set your house on fire, so is it
True.
liability? I don't
yeah,
know.
the recycling center has sort of a strict rule about like the goodie pile, you can't bring appliances and electronic things. So the goodie pile, I assume for that reason,
Because of the risk, yeah.
it just has to be put in the throwaway zone. If somebody picks that up at that point, at least they were clear about,
Right, it was in the
it was,
garbage.
it was in the garbage, so it's on you, but you know, if somebody fixes something and then you bring it home, I just wondered about the
That's a
liability.
good question, I don't know.
Well, there are other, I mean, there are these repair cafes around the country.
Yeah,
And so maybe it would just be possible to check in and see how they handle it.
okay,
Yeah, I mean, you could sign a waiver, you know, you could have everybody take something home. Sign their name on a piece of paper that at least creates some distance.
You're talking about the items which can be easily removed from a house that is scheduled for demolition. But what about the building materials themselves? Because some care would be needed during the deconstruction.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's a process involved
Yeah,
rather than
but-
just the materials.
Right, you know, but there comes a point where, like windows and doors, you know, there could be
Yeah.
some middle ground.
Right.
Hanging fruit. And again, I'm sure that there are initiatives that we could look at. Of course, the storage is a big question.
I don't know, can floors be demoed in a way that doesn't destroy the,
It takes, obviously, it's more
Takes-
costly because of the time involved.
Depends on what kind of nails are used, or how they're attached to the underlying.
Yeah, but at least appliances, lighting fixtures, you know, slate patios, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that's,
Sinks, countertops.
All that.
vanities.
yeah, yeah. And this might be something that the contractors could help us figure out how to do it. I think maybe my first stop, since I'm volunteering to research this, is I'll talk to Reed and the building department and see what their thoughts are about.
There's also a lot of liability involved with it. Because you're going into a home, you're deconstructing it, so then there's the liability that comes with the construction, with the lifting, with the moving, with the transport, depending on the age of the home, the ability of the home. You know, I think the home that you're referencing was completely invaded by raccoons, so then there's that potential health risk depending on the structure, so there's a lot of things to take into account. It's a good idea, but I think there's a lot to be worked out with it.
So that had been vacant long enough for
Yeah.
animals to, yeah. Still, I know that house and, you know, banisters and railings and all sorts of beautiful features
Gorgeous.
that, yeah, it's worth, I think, the Green Option Committee's
no, and again,
attention.
it is
It's
a
a
big,
green thing
it is a big component
of the management,
of the
waste
of the
management.
management plan. So it's something that we're gonna have to look at anyway.
Because the New York State waste management plan includes it as well. That concept of the circular.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the New York State plan. Well, we're kind of in the, anything else in the Green Expo, we can continue talking about the waste management. The only other thing I have not brought this up, but I'll bring it up when I meet with the committee heads, is I really want wherever we are, we're gonna have to set up, I won't have the luxury of setting it up the night before with myself and two other people. So I really want the committees to
Bring their own, come early, bring their gear,
come
help
up,
set
set
up.
up, and also help break down when it's over. Yes, that's all I'll say.
Sounds good.
A collaborative effort here.
But do you have a date?
Yes, the 26th of August, sorry. Of course, I didn't include any of you in the email. Saturday, the 26th.
Okay, the Manor has a concert, so that's gonna be challenge for, well, no, it's just, what is it, 11 to 2 or
11
something?
to 3.
Maybe 2
Yeah,
this year.
whatever. Yeah,
I mean, I have often felt that the last hour is kind of thin. So I'm just
yeah,
wondering
yeah.
if a
No, no,
3-hour event.
whatever the manor can do,
Okay,
it's fine.
okay.
So going on to the waste management plan, or continuing, it's really worth reading. I've gone through it once, made notes, but I just want to go through it again. There is a comment period that has been extended now to the end of June. But I think if anybody has comments, we can combine them.
For the town's plan, proposed plan?
It's for the state.
No,
It's a
this is,
state,
this-
right?
sorry.
So
New
there
York-
isn't a
the New York-
town-specific one yet.
The New York State,
Would you
yeah.
recirculate that
yes,
plan link?
yes.
Just a thought about comments. I know for federal comments, it's really useful if you have, not to combine them, because you have more weight if you have more, a larger number of comments.
Oh,
Even if you're reflecting similar ideas, that's
Uh-huh.
fine. But it's probably better to have each entity submit comments.
I just meant the committee.
Oh, I see. what
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
saying.
Yeah, no, the town, I mean, Meg has been looking at this, so the town will have its comment, and then our committee will have their comments. I just didn't want each of us, that might be easier.
And what's the deadline?
I think it's June 20,
Yeah, it's the end of June.
it's the end of June. And it's actually very easy to read through because there are a lot of graphics and just paragraph chunks. You can also just listen to the PowerPoint, which I think is like a half hour long. It was very good. But the plan itself there's a lot of repetition.
We've been talking about this for a while, right? Didn't we look at this a
Yes.
few months ago?
Yep.
June 20.
June
29th.
29th, that's what I thought. And I did ask Joe about, somehow I was confused and thought he was working on something, but he's not.
Yeah, I think that they're sort of in a holding pattern, and we have our solid waste management plan from not too long ago.
Yes,
Brian is keeping up with what they're working on at Brookhaven.
mhm,
I think what they were talking about doing was creating a transfer station. They brought a rail line in.
mhm.
And so we're waiting to see exactly how that all pans out.
Okay. I did talk to Brian yesterday about, he's putting together signage for for the plastic recycling, adding number 5 to number 2. But I talked to him yesterday about, I don't know what the signage actually says, but I've been doing spot checking when I go there, and we're still doing a really bad job. Residents are, I mean, people are throwing in stuff. It's not clean. Somebody threw in a whole kitty litter box with kitty litter in it. They throw in bags. I mean, it's just, we need to do better. And so I don't know what the signage says yet, but I think the signage has to be really, really clear about putting it in the right bins. It has to be clean, and all of those things. Otherwise, we're just, I mean, if you're going to take the effort to actually take the stuff to the recycling center, then why not just clean it?
Right.
But I think it's also seen as a way of just sort of throwing away stuff. It's, I mean, it's not horrendous, but you can do better. I think a lot of stuff is getting thrown out,
Okay.
not getting recycled. So Brian said we would talk next week. Just to remind everybody, we can now recycle number 5. I mean, not officially yet. The signage has to go up, but it'll be mixed in with number 2s. And so we'll be recycling 1, 2, and 5. But that does not include anything that's black. That's another thing that needs to be really clear. People will not be able to throw out nursery containers that are black.
What about like the takeout containers? Like the black plastic tape, clearly.
Yeah,
Is that,
well, this is something I need to, I've been in touch with the waste management person at Winter Brothers, where everything goes. And that's a little bit fuzzy to me.
okay,
I think the thicker ones that you can microwave, number 5s are okay. But then he mentioned to me in an email that the thinner plastic is not okay. But I find that like if you buy, I don't know, nuts or something, or cold takeout, that comes in a number 1 container. And I've always found the 5s to be the thicker plastic.
okay.
Like yogurt containers are okay.
Mhm.
Those are 5s usually. But I just need to get a better idea of what can't be recycled. And there'll probably be a learning curve when stuff goes to them. They can sort of tell me what's
What works.
working and what isn't.
Okay, that sounds good.
I mean, the other thing that occurs to me is, and this is something we can think about, but I know we've run into stumbling blocks with the recycling center as sort of a place where everybody can bring their food scraps. And maybe in the future that'll be worked out. But in the meantime, somebody in the Heights approached me. They asked, could they have like a local compost bin for them and their neighbors, which is something I was going to do with just me and several other neighbors. But it's something that I wonder if we could think about is going to the Shelter Island Association is actually setting up community compost centers with all the different associations.
I think that's probably more feasible than doing an island-wide composting center because it doesn't concentrate it all in one location.
Yes,
And then if you have different teams of people managing it for their area, I think that's probably the most effective way to promote it.
I think so. I think. I mean, I don't know how people will feel about it because like where you decide where it's going to be, and
The NIMBY problem.
the which.
It's a NIMBY problem.
Yeah, the NIMBY problem, and then who's gonna, you'll have to have volunteers
Maintain it.
seeing all of
Well, even
this.
if it's just like 2 or 3 neighbors want to get together and do it on one of the neighbors' properties, they all have an agreement. That kind of thing is kind of what I'm thinking of, not like maybe all of Silver Beach going to one area, but maybe clusters of neighbors who want to do it, or if individual people want to learn how to compost, maybe we could have some kind of educational program for them.
Mhm.
And just a video on the town website on how to compost effectively
Mhm.
in your backyard, something like that I think would be helpful. Because I think a lot of people want to do it, but then they think, oh gosh, it's this huge project, how would I even start? And so, I think kind of getting over that stumbling block would be helpful.
Yeah, although if you were to find, let's say, Silver Beach, one civic-minded person who has some frontage on a road that's not too busy, where it'd be easy for cars to pull over, you could do a nice success story for an association or a neighborhood and, look for one win. It would be a model. And I think that could work. I mean, I definitely think you're going to find one or more people within each association who would have an openness and a commitment to having this on their, on the edge, on the road edge. And it would be neat to do a pilot and get some, gold stars for people who take that on.
Who would provide the bins? Would they be standardized bins?
Well, this is where I was
Committee
thinking
could
of,
potentially fund
well, this is
that.
where I was thinking of Anthony, the group from
Ecological Culture Initiative.
Ecological Culture. They actually, it sounds like from an article that I read and also just from their talk that they would actually go out and actually give demonstrations or help people do this.
Yeah, somebody has to fund the infrastructure, yeah. So,
We were part of a community garden a number of years ago, and we built a bin that had 3 segments. And, all the gardeners would put their garden scraps or whatever in there. And then collectively, we would maintain it. But it was an issue making sure that there was somebody turning it So, all of that needs to be organized. But I'm wondering, do you have in mind like an open bin like that? Because food scraps, you don't want it open because you'll attract.
I have no
rats.
idea. This is not something I
Conceptual.
need to find out how this would work. Obviously, you don't want vermin.
I mean, the most convenient thing for people is just to have a bin in your back garden.
It is. It's just, we tried pre-made or manufactured, and I had no success with mine.
Oh,
I-
put worms in there.
Yeah, I didn't do that, but, but we tried that, and it was gonna be a program with the recycling center, but didn't quite pan out the way originally sort of thought about. So, we need to look at all the different ways this can be done, that people feel comfortable with. And also smell can be an issue. I had that problem. I had to apologize to a neighbor who didn't notice it. But anyway, I think having it sort of more localized and spread out in the island might be a way to do that. I mean, New York City is going to start requiring all their residents to compost, but I read the article, but there was nothing about logistics about houses.
How are they gonna make that work?
which I thought was interesting. Everybody's gonna have a little worm pile in their apartments.
You can have a worm box.
Well, actually, a long time ago at the Green Market in the city, Robin and I used to take our vegetable matter to the Green Market. And there was a group in the East Village, I forget if I recall, but they had a whole system in a backyard, and they used worms. And they had a little thing at the market that sort of showed you how it worked, a little tiny model. And it was great. Every week we took stuff to them.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, Washington DC has started composting at a neighborhood level, so they're collecting it. I don't know where it's going, but I could try to find out how they're doing it. They might be connecting it with the the dump, so they're, and the same thing could happen here. I would imagine some part of the dump could be set up as a recycling operation, composting rather, not recycling.
Riverhead's also doing the same. They've set up places where people can take stuff. And I have to ask where it's going.
Sylvester Manor's waiting on a grant funding decision that would support the expansion of the program there. We just started up the CSA, and that collection is ongoing. But the goal, especially now that we're doing aerated static piles, which accelerates the speed with which the material turns into usable compost. Very simple thing with a little blower and perforated tubes underneath the piles. So, and then they're covered, and it's just like it cooks so fast with all that air and heat.
It's called aerostatic.
Aerated static pile, ASP composting.
Aerated static.
So we are piloting one right now and building another. And the goal is still to expand into creating a space where community members who are sort of invited or notified in some way that's not too broad, overwhelming. And then we would come back, the Manor would come back to the committee to see if there's some funding to help with the containers and so on. And worms did come up in this. And also the potential for compost tea to be one of the products, which is potentially easier way to move the nutrients around the farm. So as I said, there's a grant proposal that's been submitted to a private funder who's helped us the last several years, and we're waiting to see if they're able to support it again, in which case we'll jump right in. So I guess my point is that maybe one of the places where people can drop off if we can get a community compost operation going there, near the back barn on Manhanson.
No, that'd be great.
Because we're taking way more leaves from the landscapers than we were able to in the past, having learned that even if they potentially have pesticides and herbicides, the process breaks all that down. So we don't have to ask the landscapers to pledge that these are organically treated materials. And that's enabled us to, we have 2 or 3 routine providers of landscape materials, mostly leaves.
So you need more food scraps.
So we need more greens to balance the enormous amount of browns we're getting now.
Because before you had the opposite problem.
Right. We were looking for more browns. And we got browns up, greens down, so it's, it's a balancing act.
Good. The other thing I'd say about the New York State Waste Management Plan, this is a local thing, but right now we have haulers who are single stream. So everything goes into one container. I don't understand how that can possibly good for recycling. So I don't know what other communities in New York State are doing, but I mean, one of my recommendations would be certainly the East End is that we go back to dual stream. And which sort of makes sense because you're going to have to, eventually we're going to have to be lessening the amount of wet waste that goes to, gets carted away. So it would just make it easier ultimately to be able to recycle stuff and then also compost or whatever communities are going to do or municipalities are going to do with their wet waste.
Is there anything that can be done about the containers that they're using at the IGA to package food? Because it seems they're using some kind of styrofoam and it just all goes in the trash. I mean, if you buy anything, like particularly meats or, I mean, if you eat meat and fish, but a lot of packaging, and that, I don't know what options are available to them or whether there have ever been any conversations, but I've been thinking about it and trying to figure out, what do we do? Apart from only buying food at Sylvester Manor.
This is actually, again, another component of the New York State Waste Management Plan, which is going back to the source of companies sort of being more responsible for the packaging and everything they put out so that actually it can be, there's a word for it.
There is, and I'm blanking.
Yeah, I'm blanking on the word, but
the goal is to make the producers of the products be responsible for their disposal, so that it's full circle. So if they create something that they can either then take back, reuse, recycle, or something that converts to some other product down the line, so that it's not just one use throwaway, but it makes the manufacturer more responsible for what they're creating and how they're creating it.
yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ideas in this plan that are very worthwhile. And it does address that. And certainly, the manufacturers are big. They just make the stuff and then we have to deal with it.
Right.
The new owner of the IGA, relatively new, is a neighbor, and I'd be happy to talk to Joanne about
Sure.
what they're doing and see what their thoughts are, and if they have any, they have another store up island, and maybe there's some opportunity to save them money and reduce the materials going in. So I'll volunteer
Maybe
to
just
the IGA ownership.
Yeah, that would be great. Maybe just finding out from her, what they would need to be able to use more sustainable packaging. Because I know investors who are engaging companies on exactly this issue, on packaging and trying to make it, the whole stream more sustainable. So, connecting the two ends. I mean,
And they could even just, maybe it's just a mindset change, that when they get a case of vegetables, broccoli or whatever, the consumer doesn't necessarily want that wrapped in plastic. It would be fine if it were sitting on the shelf with a rubber band around it or something. So I'll just start the conversation
Okay,
and report back.
okay, great. Okay. Anything else about waste management?
No.
Okay, and then at some point, do you still want to meet with Brian and Ken and? Okay.
Yeah.
I would just say, having been over to the dump several times recently and seen the mix in the number ones and twos and mistakes and garbage, et cetera, in there, some sort of supervision is needed there. And I don't know if Brian has the manpower, the labor to enforce actually what's being put in there. It would be nice if one of the guys said, no, you can't do that to the people. But right now, I don't think there's any supervision there at all.
Minimal. They come and go.
I actually have talked to the guys,
I have too. I've tried.
yeah. And not so much about supervision, but just about, and they're kind of sort of, what can we do?
Right, exactly.
Would it be possible, again, with liability and everything else, for volunteers to take a role there?
You can ask Brian.
I mean, I've offered, like, particularly when we step up to fives, that I've said, I will go there.
Yeah, and just do like an education.
Yes, and we could also, to your point about making a little movie, and I actually talked to, I mentioned this, I work in the Living History Project for the Historical Society, and we have a camera, sound, everything. And I mentioned this, that, would they, and I'll talk to Martin Levenstein again, but would they be willing to help us make a couple of short videos that sort of demonstrate to people the proper way to do stuff, et cetera.
I wonder if we couldn't even have some sort of really nifty setup there, with a speaker that's like a multimedia or some form of media that's running on a loop that kind of, do something really wacky where it's either, cautionary or it's encouraging or it's a combination where you go there and you hear a voice telling you what not to do.
Don't throw the kitty litter out with the plastic.
Yeah, it could be funny. It could be, and maybe that's something we could get, a kid involved in. I've just had a call from a fellow who's starting a PhD program in environmental ecological philosophy or something in the fall. He's home for the summer. He's working at SALT, and he was wondering if there was something he could do for sustainability. So I'm going to see if he wants to help research circularity, and I'll mention this. There are all these like Bluetooth speakers. I mean, we need some sort of device generating the material, but maybe
There's enough left off at the goodie pile. You could make use of it, computers and speakers.
turn it into a
Talk about appliance cafe. Don could be, take all of
I will
that.
wire it together.
well, keep an eye out, Don. I kind of like this idea.
No, I agree with you. It's like when you walk into the North Ferry at Greenport, and it's motion
there's audio.
activated. It explains to you how to get your tokens, et cetera.
Motion activated video or audio at
It'll
the
probably
dump.
drive the guys that are crazy, but
Yeah, I know that one ferry drives the ferry guys absolutely
it drives me
bonkers.
crazy. It's like I'd go in the door and I'd sneak around the wall. And then somebody comes in, no, don't move. In wintertime and summer, you go outside and escape, but in the winter.
Well, there is a downside to relentless communication,
If you
but
take a video, we can have it on the website. We can also play it on Channel 22. So then
Yes,
you can get it out that way.
Yes.
yeah, I just don't know how many people
We
see
can put it
those.
out on the Facebook page. We can put it
No.
out.
How's the,
Okay.
how's the interview process going for I know a month or so ago you were interviewing people for the sort of the town communication system where you,
Yeah, so we had a presentation from Christina 2 weeks ago, was it, for the website? So it would be a whole website upgrade. That would include like the notify me kind of applications. It would include just about everything under the sun that you could think of. And it's a company that does a lot of they do Southold, right?
Southold,
Southampton, they do the municipalities
says
around
notify
us.
me?
No, it's a whole, it would be a whole new website platform for
okay.
us that would come with all of those options.
Okay,
And it's a company that works specifically with municipal websites, so they know what they're doing, and so that's what we're looking into doing.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would be a source for getting information out
Absolutely.
in a more efficient way
Yeah.
and reaching more people.
And it would also help organize and streamline the whole website overall, so that if you cancel something here, it automatically shows it canceled everywhere else. If you add a document here, it links it to the places it needs to go, you know. And then we can also have like more of an online archive of past, you know, presentations and laws and rules, and, you know, it would just be a far more efficient and accessible, I think, website. I think ours is very good, but, you know, like all things, it would reduce the number of foils we needed because we could store more information on it.
And then would there be a way to communicate more directly with residents?
Yeah, they would be able to sign up for like a notification.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Excellent. Okay, great. That's terrific. So, you know, once that's set up, we have multiple ways of getting this information out.
Great.
Anything else?
Other business?
Other business?
I do. I want to,
Hopefully by the end of the year, it's a process for them to build it.
I wanted to talk about solar. The Sylvester Manor House rehabilitation, which is moving from schematic design to construction drawings in the next weeks and months, is aiming to electrify the manor house and eliminate fossil fuels from this as a, 21st century green historic preservation project. And as far as the demo goes, we will, in almost every case, be reusing windows, repairing rather than replacing. So there's a very strong focus on sustainability with the architect and the engineering firm. But in order to to support the electrification, it's going to, especially if we decide to do it even for the hot water, which is the hardest thing to do without gas or oil. We're looking, and we have been looking all along, but now we're moving into getting proposals for solar on the site. And the first two phases will be on structures, will be rooftop arrays, which are permitted. But eventually, we're going to be looking at ground arrays and an agrivoltaic operation that would actually feed into the demand at the manor house without putting solar on the roof of the 1737 or the 1908 edition. Although we haven't ruled that out because there's a very low profile flat roof where it wouldn't be visible. So we could probably get state preservation office support even to do that. But I believe there's still a prohibition in the code on ground arrays. And this is something that BJ and folks have been talking about for a while. And I would propose that we look at changing that, starting a process so that by the time we're ready.
Where the manor applies for an exemption. The reason why I believe that was initiated was because the neighbors didn't necessarily like looking at the ground
Case by
array
case
installation on
basis.
a residential property. When you have a small lot and there's just this big array, so I think that's kind of what triggered it. But I'll look into figuring out why. It may just be one of those things where you have a large enough property that maybe just an exemption would be.
Yeah, or I would, just to encourage more generation on the island, maybe there's a way to do it with it very clear that there's an exemption on a case-by-case basis, or that it will be considered on a case-by-case basis with all of its impacts.
Something like that,
We are, hoping to do an agrivoltaic array at some point. And again, this is not going to be phase 1 or 2, so it'll be a while, but it does take time to adapt. But it's good to know that the code is structured so that you can request an exemption. Is that right, Meg? I'll have to take a good look at it as well.
I think you could, it doesn't hurt to ask about the philosophy.
Yeah, and although, batteries are very tricky and not fully evolved and getting better all the time, and there are issues with fire protection, all sorts of issues. It's also part of the, it's not a plan, but it's ideally, there would be some capacity to store as well, energy that could be utilized on site and for the community in case of a disaster. And, we have to be able to draw water for the animals and not lose an entire, harvest of pork because the freezer is down. So finding ways to support that are, part of the strategy, long-term strategy for Sylvester Manor.
Look forward to the day when somehow solar, they can figure out a way of shrinking size.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is an issue like in rural areas in upstate New York where, even people have big areas, they don't, community does not want to have a large field devoted to, and then when you're on the train and you go to the city and you see what happened in the Pine Barrens, which it's just, to me, it's kind of horrendous to take down trees to put in a solar array. But anyway, I just look forward to.
There are innovative arrays. One that isn't going to necessarily work directly with the site plan for new greenhouses at the manor. It's a vertical array between greenhouses, and it has a morning and an afternoon peak, and it also benefits from reflection off of the greenhouse. And it takes up only this tiny slice of not usable space between greenhouses. And then there are new ones that are coming that are sort of, a brilliant twist on the arrays over parking lots that are, a massive amount of material and unattractive somewhat. There's flexible strings of solar cells that you put up on a grid, and they allow some light through, some shade. They connect to poles that automatically have a plug-in for cars. And, there's a lot of innovation happening. So we're just keeping an eye on that over at Sylvester Manor.
Okay,
I'll keep you posted.
that's great.
So Meg, I'll reread the code as well. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't have it memorized, I have to look at it, I just remember reading through it and being like, it's Brown Mountain, it was banned, but I don't remember the exact verbiage.
Yeah, and we'll be also talking to the county about this because eventually they're going to be updating the criteria for preserve farmland, which are really very restrictive in terms of how much solar can be generated. And they're way more restrictive at the county than they are at the state. So I think they're going to evolve that as well. In the process of getting these proposals, we learned from one of the potential developers that to his surprise, the LIPA, the PSEG capacity to accept energy here, clean, renewable generated energy, on-site energy was really pretty great. So the grid can take it here, even on Shelter Island, with our limitations. So that was encouraging, even for a potential community solar array. So.
And that's something actually Lynn Arthur will bring up in July.
Great.
Just some update on community solar too. Yeah, so Lynn decided, sorry, I don't think I told you. Lynn was going to talk about community choice aggregation today, but there's some new development that's going to happen at the end of this month. So she thought it best to wait until July to
That makes sense.
give an update.
The bids are coming on in. to Southampton, I believe.
Yes, yes, and then, but there was something else, I shared
else?
that. I forget what I sent you all from her.
I just read the blurb in the paper from last month. So
yeah.
I don't have an update.
Okay, no, I sent you and Sarah,
So
yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in July, we'll.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Anybody have any
Close.
comments or questions?
Did we lose Charity?
I think we lost
No, you
Charity.
did not.
Charity?
Charity, you there? Any?
I have been here throughout.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
I like
Even if we're
your,
seeing the
profile
back,
photo.
the back of your head.
Thank you.
Any questions, any thoughts?
I think in New York City, the community approach to composting has been pretty good. I think they're starting to put dedicated bins in neighborhoods that the city picks up. And that so far has been pretty popular. As you pointed out, they were working more through green markets previously. So I like the idea of community gathering supported by a sort of more general pickup.
Okay. Julia, anything?
Not a question for them.
All right. Do I have a motion to
Motion to adjourn.
adjourn?
second.
Second? Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody.